So, I don't know if people have seen the disturbing tribalist trend of data making the rounds about the coup over the last few days or so. Apparently, it's quite a surprise to people. I am not remotely surprised by the data. Hell, I'm more surprised by the fact that people are actually surprised, as if the last 6 years of life in the Western world hasn't made that obvious already. Apparently not. But before I get into the details, let me explain something from my perspective here. And this is just some things that I've picked up from listening to the likes of, say, Jordan Peterson, listening to Molbach, and reading Uncle Ted, for those of you who know what that is. Last one especially has been quite illuminating. People have to note, the leftists are a bunch of pathetic weaklings. They don't see themselves as strong humans. They aren't individualistic. They are collectivist-driven. And the coup and the state has given them a perfect vehicle with which to enact all of their mad power fantasies. Though when it comes to the left, there's two characteristics, at least the modern ones, that really define the left quite well: state worship and religious zealotry. The leftists see themselves as insignificant weaklings, because they are. They hate things like enterprise, individual agency. Anything strong and bold greatly upsets them. So if you say no to the NOD and don't bend the knee, this is seen as an act of defiance to them. You are disobeying the religious doctrine of the state, and how dare you not partake in the great offering of the state. This is also why they hate science, because scientific reasoning will produce things that are stronger and better, and it shows certain people and groups and ideas that are better, and they hate that. Because they cling to everything that is weak, you are the opposition. This is also why they hate alternative treatments to the coup and will flat out ignore any data that contradicts the state narrative. It doesn't matter if it even comes from the very same institution that produces their stupid thing. The fact that it isn't officially sanctioned by the state means participating in its use is seen as an act of heresy, like a warlock dabbling in the dark arts. That's how they view the non-believers. Your defiance is what makes them feel weak and self-loathing. And so the coup has been pretty much the rise of the Karens, because all of these people, women especially, are powerless creatures, and so the coup provides them with the capacity to, for once, feel like they matter about something, and so they will lord it over people. We all know the ones I'm talking about, the type who will scold you for getting too close, or who took a selfie to show that they got the NOD, those ones. These are the acts by which they exercise their newfound little power. As a result, the mask, far from being an effective apparatus for anything, has become merely a symbol of compliance. It is to say, I am one of the good ones. I am complying with the regime. I am morally virtuous. Their obsequious stench reeks out of their every pore. It's basically the face-covering version of a BLM lawn sign. This has become part of their political and social identity, and as such, their little face blankie has become a sort of uniform. It has nothing to do with science whatsoever. Hell, I saw this last year. The same people who would tell you to wear a mask, follow the science, when the CDC came out and said, if you've taken the NOD, there is no need for you to keep wearing the mask. And a score of people who confirmed they took the NOD, when asked, why do they still wear the thing, said, oh, well, I just feel it's too soon to take it off. I just feel better. So they will listen to the official state doctrine of science when it suits their feelings. But when it doesn't, they're going to ignore it and do whatever the hell their feelings dictate, regardless of what their previous rock of science told them. Now, the tragic irony of all of this, and this always makes me chuckle, is those who were skeptical of the CDC in this regard and went by their gut instinct instead, were actually correct. I would love to ask, if neither of us are experts, and you can go by your gut instinct and ignore the so-called experts you listened to not 10 minutes ago, why can't I? And it can't be because they're looking out for others, because that's been proven not to be the case either. I would love to get a rebuttal on that one. And so, now that the narrative is starting to flip out and the press is saying hush-hush on the case totals, their behavior is akin to that of a wounded animal on its last legs. It's going to fight like a possessed demon to preserve its newfound power and social identity. It's exactly the same kind of mentality that the Democrats have, who are doubling down on every stupid thing that's causing them to hemorrhage approval. But to that end, let's get into the actual polling results by Rasmussen. While many voters have become skeptical towards the federal government's response to the coup pandemic, a majority of Democrats embrace restrictive policies, including punitive measures against those who haven't gotten the NOD. So these people are, how can I describe them? The Untermensch of the NPCs. These people are straight up Sims of the state. The type of people who think late-night TV is funny and will parrot their scripts as if it carries any kind of scientific credibility. These are the same people who think Joe Rogan should be shut down because he's some kind of fascist. These are the same kind of people who you never have a political discussion with, because when it comes to fascismus, this lot is more confused than Elton John in a strip club. These are the same ones who haven't just drank the Kool-Aid, they're practically made of Kool-Aid at this point. But 48% favor, 48% oppose the mandates, including 33% who strongly favor and 44% who strongly oppose. And the remaining 4% presumably just called the pollsters gay or something. I want to say something about these people because I cannot fathom how a human mind gets to this point. I honestly do not understand the psychology of this, particularly in America. My mind, because I'm a bloke and I see a problem and I see the solution proposed, the instantaneous first question that comes to my mind is, have you tried this before or something akin to this elsewhere? America has 50 states, so the answer is yes. Okay, how has that proposal fared thus far? Very, very badly. Okay, so why the hell then do you want to enact this on a federal level? Where is the logic behind this? How do you not look at states who have fared better and ask, okay, what did they do differently and why does it work there? How is that not the default go-to response? I do not understand how to make that any simpler than that. I refuse to believe political and social identity are that strongly ingrained into your psyche that you would completely sacrifice your very survival as a human being to adhere to its rigidity. That is a level of suicidal stupid that is mind-blowing to me. But next up is the opinion on the garden variety gnomish gremlin that is Fauci, and no, I am not going to call him an expert, that does a disservice to real experts. But still, opinion is divided on the little bastard. While nearly 45% viewing him favorably is rather worrying, Lord knows those who still hold this opinion clearly know nothing about him, or anything about DARPA or Eco-Alliance or the GOF research. It's not exactly surprising if you look at it through the leftist state lens, but anyone who still believes him or thinks he has any shred of credibility still left, those are probably the kind of people you can sell the Golden Gate Bridge to. 48% luckily have an unfavorable view of him, by the way. But Fauci's position is not actually anchored by any expertise in medicine. He's part of the bureaucracy now, especially it's a sort of de facto religious arm. It plays into the scientism versus science role. Science is using theorems, logic, rationality, and objective reality to prove something, whereas scientism is the blanket belief of anything uttered by anything with a PhD after their name, purely because it denotes a sign of trustworthiness and high intelligence bestowed upon them by the university apparatus. And because Fauci is a member of the bureaucracy, his job is not to tell the truth. His job is to sort of facilitate the credibility of the state narrative. He is Father Fauci, man of scientism. And Fauci buys into this BS, by the way. This is why when Rand Paul was attacking him, he said Rand is really attacking science. The arrogance of that kind of line is one you would hear from a cult leader, not anyone interested in objective reality. And again, it's Fauci, so it goes without saying. He definitely thinks of himself as some kind of deity, by the way. In Christianity, we have follow the word of God. In the mind of Fauci, it's follow the science. Science with a capital S. Again, it denotes obedience. And he is the only one who can read from the Holy Scriptures. But like every snake oil salesman, all who have listened to him have made their states a living hell. Neat. There's probably many people who want to see him go, or probably worse. But he's not going to step down. It will be seen as an admission of guilt or wrongdoing. And other Republicans have said they will definitely investigate him should they retake the Senate. I don't buy that one for a second. The Republicans are notorious for having a loud bark and no bite, so don't get your hopes up on that one. You know what should make people pause for a second and think the person who helped fund this hell we've endured the last few years, that political power is required to bring him to justice and hold him accountable? That should kind of tell you something about the people who think justice and politics are separate. They aren't. But 78% of Dems favor the administration's mandate, 22% of Republicans, that is still far too high, guys, and 41% of unaffiliated voters. And many Democrats support fines for NOD dissidents and criminal punishment for those who refuse to take the stupid thing. Criminal punishment for critics and fines for those who don't get the NOD. And again, notice natural immunity nowhere in the discussion. And the media is to blame for this. Democrats are extremely misinformed about this stuff. And this draconian empowerment of federal control is being pushed by them under the guise of getting it under control. The unvaccinated are costing the taxpayer, which I never bought. First off, even by the mouthpieces of their own institutions, the mandates are never going to fix that. Especially when they stop testing the ones who took the frickin' NOD in the first place, which makes no sense. Secondly, if you happen to go to the hospital, regardless of your V status, you are still going to get treatment. So, how about you mass manufacture certain medicines that are significantly safer and cheaper and highly effective? You know, like the one that begins with an I, especially with the new wave, which is significantly less detrimental. And this is the funny thing. It would actually improve Biden's presidency. It would be cheaper, more effective, and you boost Democratic approval, as well as dunk on Trump, saying you didn't even need his help. But that's not going to increase the control of the federal government, so they aren't going to go that way. After 2 excruciatingly long years, likely voters are beginning to question the federal government's handling of the pandemic, said Chris Talgo, senior editor and research fellow at the Heartland Institute, which commissioned this poll. First and foremost, likely voters are beginning to sour on Dr. Anthony Fauci, who seems to have lost credibility after countless flip-flops. These would be the people who pay attention, by the way. Talgo continued, moreover, almost half of likely voters oppose Stuart Biden's mandate, which seems less about stopping the spread of the coof and more about increasing the power of the federal government. Told you. When asked about several other potential strategies, such as finding those who refuse to get the NOD, the consensus among likely voters is that the federal government should do less, not more. I will bet you, if you look at the words of the CDC itself and you showed it to these Democrats who favor this type of control, and then ask them, why do you still favor the mandates? They will very likely just rage, because there literally is no rational or logical reason for any of this, other than federal overreach. And of course, the federal government should do less. Hell, look at the history of federal government intervention. It is almost always making things worse. So clearly the Democrats are out of their minds. That's not a surprise. Some of the stats among likely voters. 55% of Dems favor fining those who don't get the NOD, as well as 90% of Republicans and 25% unaffiliated. 55% of Dems support the government imprisoning people in their own homes if they refuse to get the NOD, versus 79% of Republicans and 71% unaffiliated who oppose. 48% of Dems favor the state fining or arresting people for speaking out against the NOD, versus only 14% of Republicans and 18% of unaffiliated who oppose. 45% of Dems favor coof camps for those who refuse to take the NOD, versus 75% of Republicans and 64% unaffiliated who oppose. 47% of Dems favor government tracking devices, while 2/3 oppose. The only thing that doesn't have damn near or over 50% support is still an astonishing 29%, almost a third, who are in favor of the state removing a parent's child if they don't take it. President Biden's strongest supporters are most likely to endorse the harshest punishments against those who don't get the NOD. Among voters who have a very favorable impression of Biden, these people must be clearly out of their minds, 51% are in favor of the government putting the non-NOD takers in designated facilities, and 54% favor imposing fines or prison sentences on those who are skeptical of the thing, shall we say. By contrast, among voters who have a very unfavorable view of Biden, 95% are against designated facilities for those who don't take the NOD, and 93% are against criminal punishment for the skeptics. Do people see now why I oppose democracy? Because this kind of model, this lunatic level of polarizing tribalism, is not going to end well. This is the kind of attitudes that breeds fascism. I don't support state-sanctioned segregation, but if people want to willingly segregate these people from their neighborhoods and their workplaces, I have no problem with that at all. In fact, I would heavily favor it, because these people are fucking insane and dangerous. I find it rather ironic, and I will bet you will get the same answers from the ones who answered this poll as to the ones who answered the NYT one. But that NYT poll that was cited a few months back about what's your chances of going to the hospital if you catch the coof, every voting demographic, the largest group of respondents answered over 50%. But Democrats, it was 41%, Republicans 28%, and Independents 35%. The correct answer was 1 to 5%, and 26% of Republicans answered correctly, compared to 20% of Independents and only 10% of Democrats. Over 70% of Democrats got it wrong by a massive margin. And I find it pretty funny. The same people who bitch and whine and moan all damn day about misinformation and wish for the state to clamp down on this fictional bogeyman are the ones paranoid as hell, drowning in it. And this mind virus infects all kinds of people. Take a look at this. This is Justice Sotomayor. This is a Supreme Court justice. Look at this thing. I will bet you underneath that robe she looks like the Michelin Man, wearing that Lego faceplate and 2 masks. I can guarantee you this one not only took the NOD to the hills and is boosted more than a frickin' car jack. Again, I'm telling you people, the biggest skeptics of the NOD are the ones who took the stupid thing. If this picture doesn't symbolize the epitome of the fucking derangement that has enveloped society in the wake of this thing being unleashed, I don't know what would convey it better. And that's all for today. Until next time.